Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to Thursday's second half edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we do tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion that is posted on Tuesdays and Thursdays on WeAreSC.com and features WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and historians. We start off first with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this Thursday edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you some USC football news. Let's meet Thursday's panelists, a WeAreSC columnist who writes WeAreSC.com's Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and practice reports. He's also the host of his own podcast show entitled Locked On USC, Marc Kulkin, a former William Jewell College defensive back and team captain, and WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular WeAreSC.com column Musings with Arledge, and now has his own weekly WeAreSC.com video show, Musings with Arledge, a graduate of the USC Law School, the pride of the Lake Elsinore High Tigers, Chris Arledge, a former USC first-team all-conference linebacker and team captain for the 75 Trojans, team member of the 72 national champions, and a starter of the 1974 Trojans national champs, and a WeAreSC columnist who writes Defensively Speaking after every USC game, the pride of St. Francis High's Golden Knights, Kevin Bruce, and a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes Fridays, the obvious and not so obvious, IMHO Sunday, Mondays, WeAreSC Travel Guide, and an active member of the Football Writers Association of America, the pride of Alhambra High's Moors, your producer and Inside the Trojans Huddle, and moderator, Greg Katz. Before we kick off Thursday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, some brief USC football news heading into this weekend. On Saturday afternoon, the number 10 Trojans play the Arizona Wildcats in Tucson. Kickoff time 4 p.m. Game will be televised on the Pac-12 networks as the Trojans look to rebound from their earlier tough conference loss at Utah. Trojans opened as a 15.5-point favorite to defeat Arizona. And as a point of information, Saturday afternoon's game with the Wildcats will also be Arizona's homecoming game. And speaking of homecoming games, in case you missed the earlier announcement, USC's homecoming game against Cal in the Coliseum on Saturday, November 5th. Kickoff time will be at 7:30 p.m. and will be televised nationally on ESPN. And as a courtesy reminder for those of you that are not subscriber members of WeAreSC.com, there's a limited time promotion going on right now that for $10 you can access all the WeAreSC premium stories, analysis videos, and new member deals that don't expire until August 31st, 2023. That's quite a deal for $10. We say check it out. So with that, it's time for the second half kickoff. We're going to take a look at the Arizona Wildcats. Personnel-wise, Arizona under second-year head coach Jedd Fisch returned from last season 12 starters, 5 on offense, 6 on defense, along with its punter. Arizona is led by quarterback Jayden de Laura, a sophomore transfer from Washington State. De Laura is yet another Pac-12 athletic and elusive quarterback. Arizona has an outstanding receiver and sophomore Jacob Cowing, a transfer from the University of Texas, El Paso. The Wildcats also have a weapon in junior punter Kyle Ostendorp. Offensively, the Wildcats ranked 7th overall in the Pac-12, averaging 31.5 points per game. Defensively, they have a standout lineman in junior Kyron Bars and junior defensive back Christian Roland Wallace. Overall, Arizona ranks 11th in total defense in the Pac-12 and allows 36.29 points per game. Again, the Trojans opened a 15.5-point favorite to defeat Arizona in Arizona Stadium. So, panel, we've laid the foundation. Your overall thoughts on the Arizona game in Tucson this Saturday afternoon? How big a threat are the Wildcats to the Cardinal and Gold? And why would Arizona schedule USC for its homecoming game? Somebody's got to tell me why. Marc Kulkin, maybe you can tell me why. So you lead us off.
Because they want a big crowd and half their rosters from Southern California. That will be the reason. Other than that, I don't know. But as far as the game matchup head-to-head, I think Arizona can score some points in the first half. After that, I think USC should win this game easily. I just don't think Arizona has enough on defense. I mean, they're already the 11th rated defense in the conference out of 12. That means Colorado's last, I'm assuming. That doesn't say a lot for you. I think Arizona's recruited well on the offensive side of the ball. They're young and they make some plays. Other than that, this game is the type of game where USC should be in complete control by halftime. But again, it's on the road, so we'll see what happens.
Kevin, you're a former player at SC. If someone tells you they've lined you up for homecoming, does it mean the same as it was in high school when everyone would get all?
It doesn't mean diddly squat, frankly. From a player perspective, it's just like who are we playing? What's their scheme, and what are my assignments? What are my reads? What am I doing? Both on an individual level, but also on a team level. What you don't want to do is create a situation where you allow a team like that to hang around. You want to just go out there and just take them out as quickly as you can, and get other guys into the game, into the flow.
Are the Wildcats in any way, shape, or form a threat to USC?
Sure. I mean, that's why we keep score. Any team, on any given day, blah, blah, blah. Well, that happens to be true. If you make enough bonehead mistakes, of course, with our replacement of the head coach, we should have better clock management, shouldn't we?
All right. We heard it there. Chris, your thoughts?
Why they chose USC for homecoming, I don't know. I mean, they played Colorado at home on October 1st. That would have been a good one. But their other home games in the middle of the season were USC and Oregon. So neither one of those sounds promising. Look, Arizona has a pretty decent passing game. Laura's a good player, and they move the ball through the air. They're not a great running team. They're not completely inept. They don't run it a lot. They throw the ball all the time. And frankly, throwing the ball all the time against USC is what USC wants you to do. But they'll move the ball some. They'll score some points. The problem is that Arizona is horrific defensively. I mean, there's nothing they do well. They don't defend the pass. They don't rush the passer. They don't stop the run. They're right above Colorado in just about every defensive category in the conference. So USC, unless USC puts the ball on the carpet, doesn't line up right, doesn't show up mentally. I mean, unless USC is completely out of it, they're going to score a ton of points on Arizona because Arizona is a garbage defense. That's the reality. So if USC is going to score 40 points, is it likely that Arizona is going to be able to compete? Not really. It should be an easy game. And Kevin's right. Crazy things happen. We've seen big upsets happen. But it would be a gargantuan upset because USC understands what they have in front of them and how important it is. And Arizona's a really bad football team, particularly defensively.
No, I think that you have to respect Arizona for what it can do. They're competitive, and if you play each quarter, one quarter at a time, anything can happen. So I suspect SC will run away with it. But they're going to know they were in a fight. Let's just put it that way. So with that in mind, we're going to transition from the third quarter to the fourth. We do have a tradition here that I've forced upon everybody. It's called the lighting of the torch, the traditional inside the Trojans Huddle torch, a symbolic gesture to the lighting of the Coliseum torch between the third and fourth quarters. A reminder that, again, WeAreSC.com is now on, in terms of the huddle, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we do this tribute. Unfortunately, we cannot at this point play the William Tell Overture, but it's the thought that counts, right? All right. So with that official ceremony having taken place, let's transition into the fourth quarter. Lincoln Riley and roughing the passer. Here we go. Let's get ready to rumble. Early this week, in a public response to his disdain of the Pac-12 officiating at Utah regarding two specific penalties, one of which was the controversial roughing the passer penalty, USC head football coach Lincoln Riley said early, quote, "We put those two up on film," meaning the penalties from the other night, "and tell them," that's the players, "to do exactly what they did every single time." In other words, keep up doing what you're doing. Panel, knowing Riley's public response was that he will tell his players to do, quote, "the same thing every single time," unquote, And knowing Riley's comments, we'll no doubt get back to Pac-12 officiating crews around the conference. Do you think that Riley's comments will incense and challenge officials around the league and increase the odds of the same penalties being called again? And do you think it would have been wiser if Riley didn't make public comments that he instructed his players to do what they've been doing in future games? Chris, your thoughts on this controversy, or is it?
Not for me, it's not. I mean, it is the question whether if Lincoln Riley would have been quiet about the gross incompetence of the officials, would that have helped us avoid future gross incompetence from the officials? The answer is no. These guys have been terrible for years. I mean, they've been terrible for years. We've been watching. The Pac-12 has been the worst officiated conference for a long time. You watch the major games from the other conferences on Saturday, and it's not the same clown show we get. It happens over and over again. It's been happening forever. It's not going to end. USC will eventually leave this nonsense behind and go to the Big Ten. Those guys are terrible. I'm glad Lincoln Riley said it. It's about time somebody would speak honestly about this. I know the conference doesn't like it. Maybe they'll fine him. Who cares? He makes $12 million a year. It's not going to bother him. And yeah, let's tell the truth about it. Shoot, I wish that the Pac-12 coaches would have been loud in their disdain for the officiating for the last few years. Maybe the conference would have done something about it, because it's not just USC that has this problem. I mean, the officials probably cost USC the Utah game. That's true, but it's not just a USC problem. These guys are horrible every week in every game. So it's about time somebody's telling the truth about it. At least makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Mark, it obviously makes you feel better. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't going to let Lincoln off the hook last Saturday at the Utah game. I asked him the question, how do you deal with this? And I'm glad he was candid and gave his answer. And then he doubled down and followed up with it, the following during practice during the week. To your point, Chris, I've got my tinfoil hat on. Texas and Oklahoma State. I don't know if you watched that game. Texas got royally screwed with the flag. So I'm wondering if there's something going on here from the top down saying, hey, those teams that are leaving our conference, let's be a little extra critical on those guys.
Look, it's possible, but don't forget, 15 years ago,
I'm not disagreeing with you.
And while it's true that Oklahoma State didn't get a single penalty call against them, I also noticed that a lot of those false starts and other penalties on Texas, you kind of had to call.
Sure.
And that's what happens when you hire Steve Sarkisian to be your head coach, Texas. You shouldn't have done that. I could have told you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I wanted to point that out because it was just so. I've never seen a football team not have one penalty called against them in a really physical, rivalry type of game. Yeah. So that was just odd. But to the point, yeah, that's all I'll say. I'll leave it alone. I'm glad Lincoln Riley called it out. It shows that he has his players back, and he can afford it. I would keep doing it until they slap the fines out and they keep coming publicly. Keep going.
Okay, Kevin, what do you think he should have done?
He's on mute still.
Kevin, can you hear us? Are you on mute?
Yeah, importantly, it's about how they play the game. And if you let the officiating get into your head, then, bad on you. So the guys should play the game the way it should be played. And if the technique that the players displayed causes a penalty, they're going to keep calling a penalty. The guys are going to play the way they're taught. And those were stupid calls. Pac-12 is notorious for stupid calls. They're going to continue to make stupid calls, and we're going to lead the conference.
Well, I will just say this. I think Riley was right in calling it out at his press conference after the game. I didn't really have a problem with him saying that he didn't like the officiating at his press conference on, I think it was last Tuesday's practice. I did have a problem with him saying, we're going to continue to do the same thing every time, and we're going to continue to do it. Now, the reason I say that is officials are human beings. There will be some that will say, I'll be more careful the next time. And there could be some others that sit there and say, you're not going to tell us what to do. If you're dumb enough
Yeah.
to keep doing it, we're gonna keep calling flags until you stop teaching them.
Fine, they're gonna throw 10 to 12, they're gonna throw 10 to 12 penalties per game against us.
I
There it
don't
is.
know what they're gonna call.
No, that's the average, is about 10 a game.
Yeah,
That's what they've been doing.
all I'm saying is there's
Okay.
gonna be some big huevos out there with some of those officials that it's a real possibility that
Fine,
that
and
comment is gonna
let-
stay in their head.
Fine, bring it on.
I
We're
don't-
leaving. See your ass later.
Yeah, here's the
Sorry.
problem with that, Greg, though. I mean, when they call that roughing the passer penalty, I don't think there's a lot of thought that goes into pulling the flag out. I don't think they see the play and then they think, oh, that's right, Lincoln Riley said some bad stuff, throw the flag. That's not the way it goes. The reality is they're inept. They're inept and they didn't realize that he didn't lead with his head and he didn't hit the guy in the head because they're terrible at what they do. But I don't think there's a lot of premeditation going into it where they're trying to weigh the costs and benefits of throwing the flag. They just don't know what they're doing. They're terrible and they've always been terrible and they'll always be terrible. You might as well call them out for being terrible.
No, I will be more than willing, Chris, to call him out for being terrible. But my point, and I feel comfortable with it, is that they know he's made those comments and he's basically taunting them, from my opinion, even though I could agree with him, what he's saying is there's going to be a potential, not a probability, but a potential that some play would recur again and somebody's going to pull the flag because they remember what he said. that this-
How different though, Greg, is what Lincoln Riley did versus a coach running up and down the sideline, blowing in the ear hole some referee. I mean, it's the same.
I'll tell you what the
same
difference is,
thing.
Bev, from my perspective. The difference is he did it on a public stage.
Good,
Coach,
good.
Coach,
I'm glad. I'm
all
glad.
all I'm saying is.
You know what?
Say on a
It's-
sideline.
And I tell you what, I would do the same damn thing again. And I would I'd get in front of the microphone and I'd say this, if they keep throwing flags like that, I keep saying the same dang thing. To heck with them. We're leaving, guys. This show is leaving and you clowns can go throw flags at Oregon.
Well,
Is he
The
cutting
problem
off his nose to spite his face? Maybe, but I think he has the public supporting him. So if he gets a couple of bad calls throughout the season because of his comments,
We're never gonna know because of whatever.
exactly,
And don't
we're never
forget,
gonna know.
Bad calls are bad calls. These
We
guys
know
make
a
bad-
bad call when we see it, though. I mean, the one on Stanley Taofo, horrible. The one on Nick Figueroa, even worse.
Yeah, guys, don't forget that Lincoln Riley has something else that I think is motivating this because I don't think he figures these officials are going to get better.
Right.
But if USC does what Lincoln Riley expects them to do, if they beat UCLA, they beat Notre Dame, they go to the conference championship game, then at some point, Lincoln Riley is going to be lobbying to get in the college football playoff, and he's going to be competing with another one-loss team. And I think what Lincoln Riley wants people to understand is number one, USC's only loss was to a really good football team on the road by one with a 2-point conversion. And number two, that they got screwed. I think he wants to keep that in the minds of the people who make these decisions, in the media, in the people in the room who are making the decision on the playoff, because when you get right down to it, not all losses are the same. And to lose by one in a very tough road environment to a good football team where you got hosed is a better loss than what the other team's loss is likely to be. We don't know that for sure, but it's likely to be. I think that's his audience. I don't think his audience is necessarily the Pac-12 officials. They're still going to come in big shoes and red noses. That's just who they are.
Well, I don't disagree with that, actually. I think it can be ambiguous in the sense of who his message was directed at. Maybe it was a multi-message for different people. But it'll be interesting to me to see if a situation occurs, let's say in the UCLA game, where you see a call from incompetent Pac-12 official on a hit on Caleb Williams and they flag him. I know personally, my first thought will be, well, he did say they're going to keep doing what they're going to do. And is there some official that's going to say, then we'll keep throwing a flag at the worst possible? Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it would not shock me if it did. So obviously a good topic to talk about. So let's move on to overtime. Pac-12 predictions. We enter overtime play with our predictions for week 9 of Pac-12 play tonight, Thursday, October 27th. Number 14, Utah, 3-1 Pac-12, 5-2 overall at Washington State, 1-3 Pac-12, 4-3 overall, 7 p.m. All these times, by the way, are Pacific times. This one will be shown on FS1. Utah is favored by opened with an 8.5 point favorite. Kevin, make your call and tell us why.
Well, I think Utah is that's a tough draw. It really is.
All right, Chris.
I think Utah wins the game. Utah's a better football team, but Utah has some holes defensively. Washington State is not a bad football team, and it's hard to win on the road. It would not surprise me if Washington State covers and if they make a real football game of it. You know, those Thursday night road games against a team with a decent quarterback, that has trap written all over it. I think Utah wins, but I think that's a real football game.
I got Pac-12 after dark written all over this. This is going to be one of those games that it's going to come down to the end. It'll have some sort of weird ending that people will say, that's Pac-12 football. There you go. But I do think, you know what? I got Washington State pulling this one out because it's that Thursday night. It's at home. It's that Pac-12 after dark thing.
I kind of tend to agree with Mark on this. I think Washington State in Pullman at night could be a real interesting ball game. Let's put it this way. Utah, I'm sure, will be ready to play, but I look at what Washington State did with Oregon. I mean, if Washington State hangs around and they're in a comfort zone, I'm sure Washington State's learned some things. It depends on how physical Washington State can be with Utah and trying to get some separation point wise against Utah and how they want to play if they get a lead. But it wouldn't shock me if Washington State did win, although it will be the character of Utah that I think is on a mission. But again, you know, I think it could be well within 8.5 points.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I guarantee you that Washington State will figure out how to stop the tight end.
Good point. For those of you that don't recall, the tight end, Dalton Kincaid, 16 for 16 against USC, career high.
They'll use their timeouts too.
Yes, good point.
Learn from that too.
Yeah, hopefully we learn from that too.
No.
All right, let's move on to the weekend, Saturday, October 29th. Number 8, Oregon, 4-0 in the Pac-12, 6-1 overall is at Cal. Cal's 1-3 in the Pac-12, 3-4 overall, 12:30 p.m. Kickoff. This one is on Fox or FS1. I did not see the latest for sure on that one, but it's on one of the Fox networks. Oregon favored by 14.5 points. Kevin, is it even going to be a game?
No, not gonna be a game. It's gonna be one of those embarrassments of riches, and you know, it could be entertaining to like watching a track meet. It'd be all right.
Chris?
No, Oregon will cover by the end of the first quarter. Cal's terrible.
Mark, any mercy for the poor?
I'm going to stand over here on the other sideline and say Cal will cover, and this will be a tough game.
Wow. Okay.
Justin Wilcox, he'll dial up the defense for Oregon. I'm not saying they're going to win the game. I'm just saying it's going to be closer than.
I hope so.
Me too.
I'm going to take, of course, Oregon, but what I'm interested is to see how Cal defenses Oregon, because I do think Wilcox will come up with something just from a strategic standpoint to see how he plays against Oregon. I think Oregon's got way too much firepower. I don't know. Nix might be on a roll, the quarterback of Oregon, and when he's on, they're a handful. At this,
you know, what's funny to me is here we are talking about extolling the virtue of Wilcox and his defensive prowess of creating. He couldn't stop a 3rd and short at USC. Go figure.
Yeah, good point. Good point. bottom line is, I think Oregon will win by at least 2 touchdowns. I think at some point the dam's going to break, and that's going to be end of that. But it'll be interesting. I think if the game was played at night rather than 12:30, I would say Cal has an opportunity to make it more of a game than I think it could have been. But in the afternoon like that, I don't think they really.
I'm also counting on Oregon coming off their big emotional win, maybe having a little bit of a letdown going on the road. So,
All right, let's take a look at ASU, 1-3 Pac-12, 2-5 overall at Colorado, 1-3 in the Pac-12, 1-6 overall. That's a 4:30 p.m. game on ESPNU. ASU is favored by 13.5 points. Kevin, Sun Devils or Buffaloes?
Yeah, I go with ASU on that one. That's not a big stretch. Okay.
Chris?
Yeah, ASU is not a great football team, but they're not Colorado. By the way, how bad do you have to be a 2-touchdown underdog at home against a 2-5 football team that had their coach fired in the middle of the year? I mean, that's bad. And Colorado has earned all of that. They are horrific. ASU wins that game easily.
Mark?
yeah, ASU's going to win. I think they have nothing on offense that bothers me, but defensively, they're decent. They forced Stanford to have to kick 5 field goals to win that game. Go figure.
Yep. My main concern about this one is how would the fans at Colorado handle a second victory on Folsom Field? Last time they celebrated like they had just got an invitation to the Rose Bowl. This ASU team is kind of interesting to me because despite the loss of Herm Edwards, they're really competing. But the question is will they have focus against Colorado? I suspect if they do have focus, I don't know whether Colorado can score enough points really to outdo the ASU offense. So to me, it's kind of an interesting battle from that standpoint. But I think ASU will pull away and they will win the game. Stanford, 1-4, Pac-12, 3-4 overall at number 12 UCLA, which is now 3-1 in the Pac-12, 6-1 overall. 7:30 p.m. game. That's your ESPN. I don't know what they call these things, what the night owl game or whatever they're calling it. UCLA is favored by 14.5 points. Kevin, are the Cardinals going to be able to upset the Bruins?
No, not even close. The bigger question is the cover, and yeah, look, UCLA is going to run away with this thing. So it may be late in the game, as they kind of wear them down. As long as they have DTR and Charbonnet and run their offense, their defensive quirks don't really matter a heck of a lot in this game.
Chris? Are you there with us, Chris?
I don't see him.
Did Chris disappear?
He's gonzo.
All right, well, we'll continue on here. Let me get to where I was here so I can continue with this.
So I got UCLA winning this game really easily.
Okay. I think that UCLA will have too much firepower. Stanford cannot win basically kicking field goals. And it's
you can't score a touchdown at home.
Yeah, if you're going to go touchdown to field goals, this is going to be a rout. So, and DTR is really on fire when he smells blood and a rout. He's really good at that. So I'm going to take UCLA beyond the points. I think they'll beat them by more than 14.5 points. Last game we're going to take a look at is number 10 USC, 4-1 in the Pac-12. 6-1 overall at Arizona. We've already gone through their record. So this is going to be a 4 p.m. game in the Pac-12 network. SC favored by opened at least at 15.5 points. Kevin, is it going to be a wipeout?
Yeah, it is. It might take a little bit of time and some patience to wear down Arizona, but eventually they will. And yeah, it'll be a wipeout. I'm more concerned about injuries. actually.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mark, what's your take on this game? You're going to be at Arizona, Mark?
Absolutely. I'm out here already. If USC just stays on their offensive schedule like they have been, first 3, 4, 5 possessions scoring touchdowns, it is going to be a wipeout, and it'll happen early because Arizona might be able to put up some points. The whole trick in staying and beating SC, Utah showed it. You got to be able to go toe for toe, score for score, and you need some help. I don't think Arizona can do any of that, and they're not going to get nearly enough help to do that because they're not good defensively.
Okay, I will say this. This is a much more competitive team. Jaden Deloria, the transfer from Washington State, is a good quarterback if he gets time to be a good quarterback and makes good decisions. But I just don't think they have enough firepower to stay with the Trojans for 4 quarters. I could see SC being up by 2 touchdowns at the end of the first half and then kind of pulling away. But Arizona will make sure SC knows they were in a fight. I agree with Kevin. Hopefully there's no real big injuries here because it's not going to be, I think, a question of the final score. I think it's a question of, is there going to be any issues afterwards? So we'll see. I know that Chris isn't with us, but I can guarantee you Chris would say SC will be in a rout. Let's go quickly here to our weekly Georgia Southern prediction presented by the unofficial Clay Helton fan club. Last Saturday evening, Coach Clay Helton and his Georgia Southern Eagles beat Old Dominion 28-23. We will not really have a prediction on this one because Georgia Southern's Eagles, 2-2 in the Sun Belt, 5-3 overall, have a bye week before resuming play by hosting South Alabama on Saturday, November 5th. So with that in mind, that'll do it for Thursday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. A reminder, next Tuesday, we'll review and grade this weekend's USC at Arizona game, discuss some timely topics relating to USC football or college football in general, as well as answer viewer, listener, and questions. And so until then, a big thank you again to our panelists, Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, and Kevin Bruce. And a special big thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Have a great weekend. Go Trojans. This is your moderator, Greg Katz, saying, fight on, everybody.